Hello everyone, I am Dr. Sonal Jain from Department of Anthropology, University of Delhi. Today we will talk about the evaluation of crime scene. It is a part of crime scene investigation. The evaluation of crime scene includes four major steps. The first, the protection of the crime scene, then the documentation of the crime scene, which includes the photography, sketching, notes making, etc. Then searching of physical evidences at the crime scene, and then the handling of those evidences from the crime scene. To protect the crime scene, we should implement strict security measures. The whole crime scene, which is defined by the first responding officer, he should tape off the whole area. He should assign certain police officers at various posts, and he should restrict or deny admission to well-intended relatives or friends, because all these may contaminate or may destruct the physical evidence which are present at the crime scene. As you can see, we can use the printed tapes to isolate or barricade the crime scene. The yellow tapes might be used to barricade or isolate the crime scene. The printed tapes should be used to isolate or barricade the crime scene. The area should be well cordoned off so that no unauthorized person should enter that particular area. There might be certain media personals, there might be certain relatives, there might be certain friends who want to visit the crime scene, and most importantly, there might be some suspect or offender who want to come at the crime scene and who want to destroy or destruct the evidence. So the first responding officer should deny admission to all the unauthorized personnel, to neighbors, to news media personals, and the all law enforcement officers who are not assigned to the investigation. Those officers who are particularly assigned to this investigation should only remain at that particular crime scene or crime area. Another unauthorized personnels, media personnels, relatives should be taken away from the crime scene. We should also restrict or deny movement of eyewitnesses or suspects to prevent the contamination or destruction of the physical evidence. Documentation of crime scene is the most important part in the crime scene investigation, because the investigating officers who is at the crime scene, he is the one who is looking at the scene. But all the other officials, all the court personals, where at the end the whole crime will be discussed, they don't have any idea about the crime scene. The way this investigating officer or the first responding officer will document the area, through that the court or the other forensic lab scientist will deduce what is the crime scene. So he is the only person who can bring the crime scene to the lab or to the court the way he has documented the crime scene. Documenting includes the photography of the crime scene, the videography of the crime scene, the sketching of the crime scene, and making notes. Investigating officer must move purposefully and record the scene using combination of all these methods. The photography is very important, especially for establishing the physical relationship of items of interest. For example, if a homicide has been occurred at a particular place, there will be a dead body lying. So the investigating officer should photograph in such a way that this particular wall or this particular furniture, this particular corpus delicti or dead body is away at a certain distance. When we talk about the crime scene photography, the best way to record crime scene and the evidence is the photographs. And when you should look for the photographs, you should take color photographs always, because if there is any blood spatter analysis on the wall, then it will give you a contrast. Like the color, the spattering of the blood on a particular wall is best known through the color photographs. Crime scene photography should move from general to specific. Let's take an example. If there is a scene of any burglary, the first thing you should photograph is the point of entry from where the criminal might have tried to enter. You should photograph the area, the footprints, and then you should go look for the tool marks. Try to photograph from where he has made a forced entry. Then you should go to that particular room where the crime has happened, where the safe was broken, where the almirah was broken. Then you should take a wide angle photograph of the whole room. Then you should go to the specific photography. Then you should take individual photograph of the particular almirahs which was broken and from where the robbery might have happened. One should also photograph the recent available newspaper. Why it is required? Because that will give us our estimate, the proof of date of crime and the proof of date when the crime investigation has happened, and it will help us to memorize that this particular day this photograph was taken. Apart from the investigating officer, he has to make notes of date and time on everything, but the newspaper is the best way to give us a proof of date of crime investigation. So while photographing, we should establish the overall shots of the scene. Firstly, the entire scene. If a crime has happened in a building, so the person should photograph the whole building first. Then he should go inside of the building and should take a photograph of the particular flat or the particular room where the crime has happened and the surrounding areas. Most importantly, the points of exit and the points of entry should be photographed properly by the investigating officer or by the crime scene photographer. Area should be shot showing the general relationships of the item. For example, if a dead body is lying on the floor, then the nearby chair or table or wall should also be included in a general photograph, so that the person who will assess the photographs later at the lab or at the court, they should know what was the relationship between the victim, where the victim was lying, and where all other evidences would be there. The photography should be done for each and every evidence separately and together also. Each and evidence should be marked with a particular number. There should be the particular date, time. The signature of investigating officer should be kept near each and every evidence. And in most of the cases, most importantly, a scale should always be present whenever we are photographing any evidence at the crime scene, which will give us an idea of the size of that particular evidence. So a scale is must in each and every photograph which is being taken at the crime scene. The medium range shots will show the aspect and positioning of items, and close-up will show details of interest on the evidence items. The investigating officer or the crime scene photographer, he should keep a running log of all the photographs which are taken. He should number them properly and make a log out of it. In a crime scene investigation, if we look, the first photograph is showing the point of entry where there are some bloody footprints. Then we have in the second and third photograph the corpus delicti. These are the relatively closer shots, and the more closer shots should also be taken which will show the injury on the corpus delicti. This injury, the one important thing, all the photographs should be taken, should be always be colored, so that whenever there is some injury mark on the clothes of the body or any nearby evidences which are there, they should be recorded properly. As you can see in this picture, the first photograph, that is the medium short range, and then we have the second photograph which is a close short range. So the overall range, the medium range and the close range should be taken while photographing a room. In this photograph, this is an overall photograph taken from one angle. Then this is a crime scene photography from another angle where you can see how the table and chair are being positioned. Then we have another photograph with a scale. This is a bullet which is a fired bullet from a particular firearm. proper scales are being kept to know the size of the bullet, because the size of the bullet will help us in knowing what type of firearm was being used in particular crime. If the murder weapon is being found at the crime scene, it should be handled very properly, because there are the possible chances that the fingerprints might be present on this weapon. These weapon should also be photographed with a scale, and the number of evidence, the date and time should also be mentioned along with the picture. Along with the photography, in some cases it is also required to videotape the crime scene. Usually a macroscopic crime scene, which is a collection of various microscopic or various mini crime scenes, a videotaping should be done in such case. In the videotape, we should introduce with the case number, date, location. Begin with the surroundings, like the person who is videotaping the crime scene. He should enter and he should show this is the entrance, this is the exit, the probable exit from where the criminal might have taken the exit. He should tape evidence with a wide angle close up of all the evidences. And if the victim is present and the victim is alive, then the victim's viewpoint should also be videotaped. The most important thing while videotaping at the crime scene, the investigating officer should not narrate the video or should not discuss the contents. Why? Because it is his perspective when he is narrating the video. But if someone else is looking at the video, then it might give a bias. So the videotaping should be done without any narration. No voice should be there except the victim's viewpoint or any other eyewitness interview. A videotape should never be edited. The original video which is made at the crime scene, there should not be any editing in the original video which is made from the crime scene. Wherever we have any blood spots or any blood spatter, that should be photographed very carefully from the wide angle, from the medium angle, from the close angle. Because the forensic biologist at the crime scene, they look at the blood spatter analysis, and from there they calculate or they reconstruct the crime scene using that blood spatter. The next technique for documentation is crime scene sketching. The sketching of crime scene is as important as crime scene photography. It relates to the sequence of events at the scene. It is the accurate portrayal of the physical facts. The photograph is basically chunks of various parts, like the entry, exit, where the crime has happened, this evidence is here, this evidence is located here. But a crime scene sketch will give us an overall view, giving where is the dead body, how far it is from this wall, how far it is from the furniture, and where are all the evidences marked in comparison to the dead body. Crime scene sketching is very important for the reconstruction of the crime scene, as it establishes the precise location and relationship of objects and evidence at the scene. It helps us in creating a mental picture of the scene. Sketching provides a permanent record of the crime scene, because an investigating officer have been visited to the crime scene and that case is being presented in a court maybe few years later, then this permanent record, the crime scene sketching or the crime scene photographs, it will help in reminding the investigating officer about what has happened at the scene. Because the investigating officer might have taken care of many crime scenes, so he should make a permanent record with all the photographs, videotapes, as well as sketching of each and every crime scene. That will help us in reminding the crime scene later. And these crime scene sketchings are usually admitted in court of law. The crime scene sketching, we have two types of sketch. One is rough sketch and one is fair sketch. Rough sketch of crime scene should be made by IO. Sketch plus photographs provide the ideal presentation of a crime scene. The sketching should be done itself on the scene. The distance for a rough sketch, the approximate distance can be used, and the most importantly, when we are making a rough sketch or a final sketch, the direction north should always be pointed up. From the compass, the investigating officer should look for the direction, and the north is always upwards in a sketch. Sketch should show and locate all the important objects and evidences which are present at the crime scene. So we have one rough sketch and one finished sketch. The rough sketch is made at the time of the investigation, and it doesn't have to be very pretty. But the finished sketch, it is made from the fact after the rough sketch, and it should be very neat, well drawn, with all the items easily identifiable. The rough sketch gives us an approximate idea, whereas the finished sketch, it has the exact measurements. If the dead body is lying 10 cm away or 20 cm away from the wall, then the finished sketch gives the exact dimensions from where the dead body is lying away from that particular wall or the door or any other furniture item. All measurements should be as accurate as possible and should locate the item from at least 2 landmarks, whether it should be wall, doorway or any other fence. As you can see, this is an example of a rough sketch. It is not drawn with the help of any scales. It is roughly drawn by the investigating officer, which is showing the various walls. The 4 boundary lines depict the walls and all the major items like the furniture, where the dead body is lying, and where are all the physical evidences. In this rough sketch, we also mention the name of the investigating officer who is conducting this investigation, date, time, location, case number, and then we have a list below where we will mention the number 1 is this evidence. For example, the number 1 is dead body, number 2 is we have blood, number 3 we have glass pieces, number 4 murder weapon. So this should be mentioned in the rough sketch. Then the fair sketch we have. In the fair sketch, each and everything is drawn with a scale. The direction is mentioned upwards. The dead body is located, the distance from the various walls, and all the evidences are located with the accurate measurements. So the lab scientist who did not visit the crime scene, they can have a perfect idea how did the crime scene appear when the investigating officer approached the crime scene. This sketching helps in the reconstruction of the crime scene, because the way the dead body is lying on the floor, it will give us an idea from how much distance, if the victim is killed by a bullet, from how much distance the bullet was fired. If the victim is lying, then in which direction the criminal might have attacked him, depending on all the evidences which are nearby present. So this is a finished sketch made by a person, hand drawn with the use of scale. Nowadays we also use various softwares like AutoCAD etc. to make a computerized sketch, which will give us the whole location and each and everything which is present at the crime scene. The crime scene documentation, or when we are talking about the making of sketch, the final sketch can be made by either the triangulation method, baseline method and the polar coordinate method. Usually triangulation method and baseline methods are used for the indoor crime scene, and the polar coordinate method is used for an outdoor crime scene. For the outdoor crime scenes, when we are using polar coordinate method, we should identify a certain object from where the particular measurements will be taken. Third important thing of documentation after photography and the sketching is the notes making. Note taking at the scene must be a constant activity, and it should include the whole scene. The investigating officer who is dealing with the scene, he should have a detailed written description of the scene with the location of the items of the physical evidences recovered. Supposedly, if he has found blood drops at various locations. So he should mark different blood drops like blood drop 1, B1, B2, B3, B4, because the B1 might be the blood from the victim and B2 might be the blood from criminal or criminals. So they might be blood of two different people. So the evidence which are similar looking, but they should be marked differently. He should not make assumptions of his own that this is victim blood only or this is criminal blood only. That is further being analyzed in the lab. So all the evidences which are present at the crime scene, they should be marked differently, whether they are pieces of glass, they are blood evidence, or they are any hair or any fiber evidences. The notes should include the time of discovery. For example, in a case of forced entry, when the tool marks are being seen by the investigating officer, if there are 3 and 4 people who are present at the crime scene, they should note down who has discovered that evidence, who has taken the photograph of that evidence, and when he has discovered that evidence, how it was discovered, and who handled the item before packaging. This is all required because in certain cases the evidences are being exchanged. So if we have the name of the person who was dealing with that particular evidence, then he should be held responsible later for the same. The person who has found the evidence, who has packaged the evidence, who has marked the evidence, his name, his signature should be present on the particular item, and who has disposed the particular item to the forensic science lab. Now, after the documentation of the crime scene, we have searching of crime scene. A systematic search for evidence should be conducted at the crime scene. We have search control. One person should be held responsible to prevent a duplication of any effort or any missed areas. The search criteria should include the nature of the crime, and the scene will determine what and how you search. For example, in the case of hit and run case, you will search for the paint chips, the glass which is being broken, and in the case of robbery, you will search for the forced entry. In the case of a homicide, you will search for the dead body, for the nature of weapon, etc. Depending upon what type of crime is that, your search strategy will differ. No crime scene is ever same. Each and every crime scene is different. So, the investigating officer should use a different search criteria for each and every crime scene. The different search criteria will differ for different crime scene. So, a certain expertise must be developed by the crime scene investigator so that they recognize the scene type and they can direct the search correctly. For the search strategy, often the physical makeup of the scene will determine the search strategy. There are various patterns that have been developed for different environments. For the search evidence, again the nature of the crime will determine what you search for, as I discussed. For homicide, one would search for a weapon, as well as searching for blood, cross transfer evidence, for any other trace evidence. In the case of burglary, one should search for evidence of forced entry, shoe marks, fingerprints, tool marks, etc. And for the case of hit and run, one should search for glass, paint transfer, tire marks, etc. The searching for crime scene, one should look and search for every possible evidence that one suspect should have been present at the scene. Some common methods which are employed are zonal method, spiral method, strip method, grid method, and crosshatch method. The spiral method, the investigating officer should start from the center and move spirally in the crime scene. Then we have the grid method. He should move perpendicularly, vertical. He should go vertical and then take a U-turn, come vertical, and same way repeat horizontal. Then we have the strip method, where the investigating officer should start vertically, take a U-turn, and then come down. We have zonal method, where the whole crime scene is divided into 4 zones, and those zones are particularly divided into 4 different zones. So the spiral method and the zonal method and the strip method are basically used for a smaller area or for an indoor area, whereas the grid method or the crosshatch method is used for the bigger or outdoor crime scenes. So the zone are particularly divided into more zones for the better searching. The spirally, it cover basically all the area. While moving in the spiral, the investigating officer should look towards the left as well as right of the crime scene. In the strip method, the two investigating officer can start from one point and another IO from the other point. In the crosshatch method, they should go vertically and they should go horizontally, looking towards their left as well as towards their right. So after searching meticulously for each and every physical evidences, the major task is the collection and packaging of physical evidences. They should be properly packaged according to their type and then labeled and sealed, and a proper chain of custody should be maintained for the collection and packaging of physical evidences. Once items which have been properly packaged and labeled, they should be transported to the lab for further evaluation. A complete and correct chain of custody must be maintained for all the time. Often it is not the evidence collector who transports the evidence to the lab, so a log must be maintained indicating the transfer of custody to and from every individual, like who was involved, the person who located the evidence, and the person who packed it, and the person who transported it, and the person who has given this evidence to the forensic science lab. The collecting officer, the transportation officer, the storage officer, and the laboratory evidence collection person who has collected the evidence. While collecting the evidence from the crime scene, the most important thing which an investigating officer should keep in mind is the crime scene safety. Due to changes in the social milieu, there could be deadly diseases like AIDS, hepatitis, etc. So proper safety guidelines a crime scene officer should maintain. The minimum level of protection is the investigating officer should always wear gloves and shoe covers, and it is also recommended that the investigating officer wears some sort of mouth covering and eye protection at scenes where blood or any biological materials are found. Also, most importantly, lastly, the scenes where contaminated dust or gas are there, the investigating officer should wear a particle mask or respirator as well as goggles of some kind to protect himself from any other respiratory issue. Thank you so much.